Today, we're talking about a massive and frankly, absolutely crucial shift happening in enterprise security right now. We are moving away from reactive, isolated vulnerability scanning to a much more proactive, continuous, and holistic defense strategy. If you've been feeling like you're just constantly putting out fires without actually reducing your organization's real risk, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to unpack exactly why those traditional methods are failing us and how to master this modern approach known as exposure management.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with Section 1, the modern threat landscape. Then Section 2, defining exposure management. Section 3 will cover the 7 core components. Section 4 gets into overcoming implementation challenges. And finally, Section 5 explores the future with CTEM and PTEM. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, the modern threat landscape and the expanding perimeter.
So to really understand why we need a totally new approach, we have to look at the reality of our digital footprint today. I mean, our organizations are facing incredibly sophisticated AI-assisted cyber attacks across a dramatically expanded surface. We aren't just protecting a single office building's network anymore, right? We're managing hybrid and multi-cloud environments, a massive remote workforce, endless third-party integrations, and super-fast DevOps deployments. Because of this, modern attackers, they don't view your organization as just a list of isolated software bugs. They don't just find one single flaw, exploit it, and call it a day. Instead, they look at the whole big picture and ask, how can I chain these different weaknesses together? For instance, an attacker might combine a slightly misconfigured cloud storage bucket with a weak identity control, steal some credentials, exploit excessive user permissions, and use a little social engineering to completely breach your systems. It's literally like a burglar noticing your front door is locked, but then using a ladder someone left in the yard to climb through an open second-story window. They view your network as an interconnected web of opportunities. So, if we're only looking at these risks in total isolation, we are completely missing the actual threat.
Which brings us to Section 2, defining the shift and entering the era of exposure management.
This right here is the paradigm shift we desperately need to make. Traditional vulnerability scanning, that's the old way. It's essentially playing whack-a-mole with isolated software bugs. You do a point-in-time check, maybe run a scan once a quarter, and treat every high-severity bug as a massive sky-is-falling emergency, regardless of its actual context. Exposure management, on the other hand, is a continuous dynamic process. It considers the entire interconnected attack surface. It starts by discovering all of your digital assets, on-prem, cloud, SaaS, IoT, the whole shebang. Then, it identifies not just software vulnerabilities, but misconfigurations, excessive privileges, and exposed credentials. And most importantly, it assesses how exploitable these weaknesses actually are in the real world, so you can prioritize your fixes based on true business impact. You're moving from this narrow, isolated view to a truly comprehensive, interconnected reality.
So, how do we actually do this? That's Section 3, the core framework, breaking down the 7 essential components.
The first 4 components are your absolute foundation. Number 1, asset discovery. You simply cannot protect what you don't know exists. This requires a complete, real-time inventory of your servers, cloud workloads, APIs, mobile devices, you name it. Number 2, continuous vulnerability assessment. We are dropping those quarterly scans in favor of ongoing, continuous monitoring of OS vulnerabilities, missing patches, and application flaws. Number 3, attack surface management. This one is absolutely crucial because it's looking at your organization from the outside in. What does the attacker actually see? Exposed APIs, forgotten subdomains, leaked certificates. And finally, number 4, identity exposure.
I really want to pause on that last point for a second, because this quote perfectly captures our modern reality. Identity is the new security perimeter. It's true. A lot of successful breaches today don't even bother exploiting a complex software flaw. They stem directly from identity-based attacks. Attackers are going after privileged accounts, dormant accounts that someone just forgot to disable, weak passwords, and users who have way more permissions than they actually need to do their jobs. Auditing and securing those identity attack paths is a non-negotiable part of exposure management.
Okay, moving to the final 3 components on our list. Number 5 is cloud security posture. Cloud environments introduce these rapid, unique risks like public storage buckets or unencrypted databases that need specialized oversight. Number 6 is attack graph and path analysis. Remember earlier when we talked about chaining weaknesses in that ladder analogy? This component maps out those realistic attack chains for you. It shows exactly how an attacker could, say, hit an internet-facing server, harvest some credentials, move laterally, and eventually snag domain admin access. We have to prioritize breaking those specific chains, which leads us directly to number 7, risk-based prioritization. Look, not every single vulnerability is an emergency. This component filters out all that extra noise by evaluating if a vulnerability is actually being exploited in the wild, how critical that specific asset is, and what the true business impact would be. That is what lets your security teams focus on what actually matters.
Now, what's really cool is how these components fit into a continuous life cycle. It flows naturally from discovery to assessment, right into prioritization, remediation, validation, and finally ongoing monitoring. It's a continuous loop, not just a one-and-done IT project. And to make this massive loop actually function, organizations are relying on a mix of integrated tools. They're breaking down the silos between traditional vulnerability management, cloud security posture management, identity threat detection, SIEMs, and SOAR platforms, all to give you one comprehensive, unified view of your risk.
But let's be real for a minute. Section 4, Operational Reality and Overcoming Implementation Challenges.
The reality on the ground? It's tough. Security teams are constantly battling these massive, wildly dynamic attack surfaces. You're dealing with legacy, unpatchable systems that just have to be kept online for business reasons. You're fighting hidden shadow IT, those random servers and apps spun up by different departments without security even knowing. And perhaps most painfully, you're suffering from severe alert fatigue. Trying to balance operational uptime while you're drowning in false positives? Yeah, that's enough to make any security professional want to pull their hair out.
So how do successful programs actually overcome these hurdles? Well, they lean hard into strict foundational best practices. They maintain that real-time asset inventory so there are zero blind spots. They rigorously enforce least privilege access and robust multi-factor authentication to neutralize all those identity threats we talked about. They utilize threat intelligence to make their risk-based prioritization actually work. And crucially, they track hard, concrete metrics like mean time to remediate or MTTR to measure their operational efficiency. That's how you prove your continuous loop is actually reducing risk over time.
As we look toward the horizon, we hit Section 5, the future, moving to CTEM and PTEM.
There are two major pillars driving this future evolution away from the old static practices. First, you have CTEM, which stands for Continuous Threat Exposure Management. This is a strategic organization-wide framework that ensures risk reduction isn't just some IT side hustle. It's a continuous program that aligns your security testing directly with your actual business projects and threat vectors. And then there's PTEM, or Preemptive Threat Exposure Management. This is where things get truly futuristic. While CTEM is about continuously managing exposure, PTEM injects predictive AI, attacker behavior modeling, and heavy automation right into the lifecycle. It moves way beyond just asking what can be validated today and uses threat intelligence to predict exactly which exposure paths attackers are actively planning to exploit next.
Think of this as a complete maturity model for your organization's security posture. We all start at the baseline with reactive defense, that static whack-a-mole approach. Then, we mature into continuous validation with CTEM, where we are actively managing and aligning our risks. But PTEM? PTEM represents the ultimate goal, proactive risk reduction. By simulating full lateral movement and automating containment, PTEM allows your teams to neutralize those critical attack paths before an adversary even has the opportunity to strike. It shifts the entire dynamic of your security program from defense to proactive neutralization.